Hello. Just started this evening's live. Okay, so Ken is just joining in now.
I guess we're like this.
Ken.
Right? How are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Sideways, but let me just hopefully that'll work.
Where's your microphone? I think it's covered.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Okay, let me just set up the camera. I had actually set up the camera the other way around.
Okay.
Right, lovely. Great, lovely.
Perfect.
You look a lot better than I do. Great, for now.
Time to blow dry the hair.
Great, not.
Wait, your microphone is still low.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, it's better.
Let me see if I can go a bit closer. Okay, great.
You'll have your full head in the screen.
I know, yeah. That,
Yeah, okay. I think that's better.
lovely. Great.
Oh. Okay, we can get started because it'll cut off after an hour and people can watch the playback anyway.
Great.
So how this came about, okay, so we'll start off with an introduction, I suppose, for anyone who doesn't know one or the other of us. So I'm a swimmer and I obviously share the water with other wildlife when I'm swimming, but I rarely see it because I usually just have my head down. My eyesight isn't the best. I wear prescription goggles. So unless something's right in front of me when I'm swimming, don't see a lot of it. I see a lot of jellyfish and seals are probably the things that have come closest to me, but not many close wildlife interactions until I suppose really this year. And I was in Antarctica. So when I came back from Antarctica, it was all of my self-isolation ran into the lockdown time. So I didn't really get to talk to anybody about it. So a few people were asking me about Antarctica, and I suppose the real thing that I found from that trip was I was reading your book while I was there. Everything that I was seeing in the water, you were talking about seeing it off the coast of Ireland, and I suppose that's what blew my mind really. So the closest wildlife interaction I had in Antarctica was a minke whale that went right under the zodiac we were on, and that happened twice. So I know you've seen minke whales like in the water up close off the Blaskets, and yeah, so that's where it all came about. Since everybody is kind of resorting to online interactions and conversations, that's where this came about. So I'll hand over to you, Ken, if you want to talk about yourself a little bit, and we can start talking about minke whales then after that.
Great. They're far more interesting than me, I can tell you. Anyway, so yeah, Ken O Sullivan. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I live here in Lahinch in Clare. I'm absolutely blessed to do so. And I make wildlife documentaries with a small production company with my wife Katrina, and she does kind of terrestrial land stuff, and I'm in the sea, which is where I love to be as much as I can. And yeah, God, we have so much wildlife in Ireland. I mean, it's interesting you say that, you see these animals in the Antarctic, and of course they would be more abundant in the Antarctic. But to date, we've seen 25 different species of whales and dolphins in Irish waters. And commonly, we would see minke whales, humpback whales, fin whales, common dolphins. I would say every day, pretty much, we go out in our river, we find common dolphins, bottlenose dolphins. And I suppose, I'm not being critical of anybody, but we probably don't have a great awareness still in Ireland of the richness of these animals in our waters and the habitats. You can go to the Shannon Estuary any day in the year. Well, you need your own boat, but in the summertime, after
Yeah.
there are tour guides and operators that will bring you out. There's a resident pod of 140 bottlenose dolphins. Only two places in Europe where these pods exist. And you can go there any day of the year and see them. If you want to watch whales, go to the Blasket Islands in the summer. There's a couple of operators there, Mick Sheeran, Blasket Island Eco Tours. Go to West Cork, Colin Barnes, West Cork Whale Watch. There's 5 or 6 or 7 operators there. And pretty much any day those guys go out, they have at least common dolphins, but quite often seals, humpback whales, minke whales, fin whales, who knows, hundreds and thousands of seabirds to see. So it's very rich what we have.
And do you think our visibility has anything to do with our lack of awareness, or is it just that the boats aren't in operation?
Do you mean the water visibility?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, well, I mean, our water visibility isn't great compared to the tropics, but that's because there's more life in our water.
yeah,
It's not great because it's full of plankton and then everything feeds from there. I mean, the seas are quite wild here, so it's a difficult place to
yeah,
operate watching tourism, as we all know. You have to, cast your mind back 150 years to pre-industrial revolution era, and, we wouldn't recognize the seas that would have been there and the abundance of these animals. If you go to the Natural History Museum there in Merrion Square, you see some of the specimen cod that they have. They're the size of porpoises. They're just absolutely huge. All caught 1820, 1830, 1840, pre-industrial revolution. So, there's two species of whales that are gone from Irish waters, the grey whale and the North Atlantic right whale. I think there's about, somebody's estimated there's 15 or 19 right whales left in the North Atlantic. I don't know how to get that, but they're pretty much gone. The grey whale is gone. That's been gone since the 18th century because of whaling. So I think there have been 100 individual humpback whales catalogued in Ireland, which is great, and that's pretty much in the last 20 years. But we need to do an awful lot more to conserve them. The Australians reckon that they had about their humpback whale population was down to about 3,000 in the 1970s, and 40 years later they feel that they have 30,000 humpback whales. So we've got to stop taking all of their food. We've got to stop stupid fishing like sprat, which is used in fish farms, or it's used in lawn fertilizer. It's 180 euro a ton. Why take that out of the ocean when all of the bigger fish feed on that, and the whales and the dolphins and the sharks? Sorry, I get that little.
No, I was going to mention sprat actually, because
Yeah.
no, I know we all think that whales just go like any of the filter feeders, that they just go around eating krill. But I learned that from your book that they eat sprat, and that's not regulated. You can fish as much sprat as you want.
Yeah, no, Minister Creed, in fairness, has finally, and there's been a lot of ministers before him who ignored it, and I'm not talking anybody up politically, they brought in something that they're going to phase it out over 3 years, and be a certain amount to catch, but there's no research being done, so we don't really understand the populations, and they fish them in the spawning season, which is the absolute worst time to do it. So look, there's progress, and I'm all for, you've got to work with people, you can't fish out in the people. No one giving out about politicians and civil servants. You try to bring them along and create awareness.
Yeah.
And we're really proud that 16 sections of our last series are now on the junior cycle curriculum, and means every teenager in Ireland will see humpback whales in Clare and Cork and Kerry, not in the Great Barrier Reef, and they can identify with that. It's local. So
Yeah.
hopefully create awareness of the many issues which I'm sure you're aware of, Dee, in the ocean.
Well, yeah, obviously, what I've become, I know we talked about it before, is the shipping and that, and that's something that I suppose in 2016 was when I first realized about plastic in the ocean, and I stopped having a plastic lid on my coffee cup, and it grew from there. But it's only really this year, 2019, last year, that I've started to think about the shipping. So, you're buying everything online now, and you're trying to choose better products, but what you actually need to do is shop local and not need things to be shipped to you. Because I'm only learning about that now, the problems that it causes and how it interferes with the whales, and it's it's a realization. If you realize that this is what's going on behind, you'll stop. Whereas if someone just tells you to stop and you don't understand why, then you'll never change your habits.
Yeah, I mean, I have to believe, I'm an eternal optimist. I have to believe that if people understand issues and how they can change things, that the vast majority of people will do something to change. So there's a couple of facets to this issue. First, we talk about shipping, and with consumerism and internet buying, internet purchasing, of course, there's vast more amounts of consumer goods coming across the world. When I was a kid, my aunt would come home from England and we got a T-shirt or something, and it was a big kind of a thing. Clothes are so much cheaper. It doesn't mean we have to stop internet shopping. It's not. It's about moderating and regulating the amount that you buy. Because
Yeah.
then, so much clothes and stuff that you may or may not need comes from China. It has to come on a ship. You have to see these ships. So some of these ships now are more than 400 meters long, bringing these container ships we're talking about. So now that's 3 Croke Park pitches long, almost.
Yeah.
The noise that they generate in the ocean is now, it's officially a pollution. So for whales and dolphins, for example, sound is their primary sense in the same way that sight is for us. So suddenly if you put all these noise, it's like, for example, they're like strobe lights at a disco or a nightclub or something like that. So it can very much interfere. And of course, shipping lanes are concentrated. So, you can say the middle of the Atlantic might be fine, but what about the English Channel? If you look on, there's a great app you can get, Marine Traffic. You can see all of the ships and fishing trawlers all over the world. Have a look at it someday in the English Channel, and there are thousands of ships going through there, or south of Cork, So that creates a big thing. Again and again, there's research that shows for every euro you spend locally, there's something like 7 or 8 times that euro is generated locally, is passed around. If you can shop local, do it. It's not absolute, you don't have to buy everything local, but do shop local. We've great local vegetable growers here in Clare, My Hill Community Farm. You spend the money to them, they get the money, not, some German supermarket, stuff that kiwis that have been shipped from New Zealand, or avocados, and all of the carbon footprint that goes with that. So spend the money locally and try to think about the online shopping. I know it's different now with the lockdown, but people kind of have to shop, and I think you can't be too sanctimonious or righteous. It's about moderation. Think 20-30% difference, If we did
Yeah.
something 20-30% less, that's not that much. Imagine if we lowered our greenhouse gas emissions by that, we'd be okay. Do you know what I mean? It's not like we don't all have to buy electric cars and walk to work.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. It is the moderation, because it's very hard to go 100%. Like, you'll never change a habit if you try and do too much at one time. Um, so
Tell us about your swimming. Come on.
well, when you're talking about the English Channel, there's a great picture when I was going across the channel, and there is one of those massive big container ships in the background. So I know exactly the scale and the size, because I was the little dot in the water when it was going by.
You're
But
very
yeah, I
great.
suppose the English Channel wasn't as dirty as I expected it to be. I thought it would be. I was expecting the water to be really scummy in the shipping lanes, but I was pleasantly surprised it wasn't that bad. So I know that's all to do with I'm sure it can be different for everyone's experience for what the tides are doing and where you are in the actual channel. But it did give me a little bit of hope. Whereas, I've been in other places, like I've been in Sri Lanka for surfing, and like the water there in certain areas, that was a real eye opener for me, just how much plastic collects in the ocean, where at a different place it can be lovely clear water.
Yeah, yeah. But
But
we're very lucky, particularly in the west coast of Ireland, that we have largely pollution-free waters. I mean, the big
yeah,
issue we have probably are some localized sewage issues, but the problem, of course, microplastics, and
yeah,
you probably may have seen in the program. We went out to the edge of the continental shelf and sent a submersible down 1,000 meters to find cold water coral reefs, and then what do we find? Is plastic bottles and Coke cans and couriers. The Coca-Cola company didn't put it there.
yeah,
Somebody overboard. But look, hopefully we're getting more aware of these things. And I go to schools and do talks, and I say to the kids, is plastic a good thing? And they go, no, it's terrible. I say, well, no, plastic is a good thing. It has served humanity really, really well. The question is the single-use plastics, the stuff that we only use once and chuck away, and how we manage it. That we need to use less of that. Again, just some moderation. But anyway, I digress. Come on, tell me about swimming the English Channel. It must be incredible.
well, yeah, I was very lucky. Like, I thought it wasn't going to happen because I was so long waiting for the actual window. So that's the way it works, is you have everyone's booked on a slot, and the weather blew up for my slot, but they don't book a lot of people on a spring tide, which is where you have more water moving. So I was able to stay on the extra few days. I was able to have a full crew change, bar Cliff, who he was the one person that lived local, so he could stay. Everyone else had to change, and it was exactly as I would have written it if I was picturing how it should be. So I started at 1 in the morning. it was dark, and I never saw the big white cliffs of Dover looming over me from behind. So that was that section gone. Then the sun came up, a beautiful sunrise. You know, it really is the way it would be written in a story. The pink sunrise, and Gavin got lovely pictures of that. Then got into the shipping lanes. It was lovely, calm water. It never got, you know, I had done so much training for it, and Cliff had prepared me all the way, as in, he said, you'll get through all the shipping lanes, and that's getting to the base camp of Everest, and then you have to get to the summit. So I was expecting things to go really bananas for the very last section, but I did see how bananas it got, because I could see how fast the current moved, because there was a lobster pot that I collided with. The boat had gone on and moved to avoid it, but they didn't predict how fast. That was the first time everyone saw how fast the current was moving. So I actually collided with it, but it didn't injure me because it was a rounded one, so it was fine. But you know, it was a bit of I was really close to the cap at that point, so I wasn't sure, was I landing at the cap or was I going on to Wisson Beach? But I did end up going on to Wisson Beach, and it was like, you know, I think it was 4:30 in the afternoon or something, so the beach was full of people. You know, I had a barrel jellyfish. I just went past it on the way in, which was lovely for me, because the first time I saw a barrel jellyfish was in Abersock, when I did my 6 hour back. I did 2 6-hour swims back to back with my friend Andrea, she did all the feeding for me. She was supposed to be on the boat, so she couldn't stay and be on the boat. So seeing that barrel jellyfish was a little connection to the swims in Abersock. And then I was there at the finish, and, you know, Gavin and Cliff had swam in either side of me, like as the bouncers. And we got to the beach, and it was like, don't touch the swimmer. So I cleared the water, and then there was, you know, it was like I had my own little welcome party there at the end, which is, you know, not a lot of people have that. A lot of people have a real kind of anticlimax at the end of a big swim like that, because they finish in the middle of the night, or they finish on the cap and they're climbing up rocks and they're barely making it, you know. So I really had the textbook dream channel, I think.
Wow, and how many hours were you in the water then?
That was just under 15 hours for that one.
Oh, no wetsuit.
Yeah, so you get into a nice rhythm of it, in that I find I say the first 10%, for me it's kind of the first 2 hours now is what I struggle with, and then once I break past that, it all gets a bit easier, and you get into you know, you start to think you've done a substantial enough distance that you may as well keep going, because you don't want to have to repeat it again, you know.
Yeah, I've never swum for 2 hours, so I don't know.
We'll get you there.
Be able to, but anyway, yeah.
But yeah, the big difference then, I suppose, so I you know, I do the cold water swimming as well. So, and just to pull it back to Antarctica a bit, so that was the coldest water I ever swam in. It was 1 degree, but it was a different kind of water. You know, it was like lovely silky water. It was clear water. It was just totally different. It just felt clean, felt beautiful to be in, and I didn't worry about, you know, a lot of people, there's a lot of hype about leopard seals up around there, but it wasn't something that worried me, because, you know, we had a lot of zodiacs and there was a lot of eyes on the water. So, you know, it wasn't like anything was going to happen. But I think the Antarctic continent has an air of peace about it. It's, yeah, and even like when that minke whale went past, we were on the Zodiac, but I don't think anyone on the boat had a fear of, oh, is its tail going to flip us? You know, people weren't in that frame of thought. It was just a real kind of air of peace about it. But I don't know if you feel that when you see things out off the Irish coast.
Oh, well, I wouldn't be too worried about a minke whale. They've no
Yeah.
A leopard seal, whew, if anyone doesn't know what they are, I mean, somebody said recently they're the most over-engineered animal in the world, because I think do they live on some kind of prawns, and I can't remember what they feed on, but they are huge. They're about, what, 3 meters long, something like that? And
Yeah,
just like
someone had said 5 meters, as like maybe
5
the
meters.
male is 5 meters.
Yeah, and they're really aggressive. They've got huge teeth. They're I know somebody who dived in the Antarctic, took a chance, and one actually came down and put its teeth around his head, Bill's
Yeah.
head. That's how big its mouth was. It would fit
Yeah.
a man's head. Yeah, I mean, they have killed people, so I'd be a lot more wary of them than a leaky whale. 1 degree water, D. Oh my God! And how far did you swim in that?
That was a 300-meter test swim. That was between icebergs, so it was, the lovely picturesque Antarctica swim. And then the longer swim was at Deception Island. That was 1.6 degree water, and that was a kilometer. So that
That's
was my first
fun.
kilometer that I've ever done.
Oh my God! Oh,
Yeah,
kilometer in 1.6 degree water. I don't know. I couldn't.
yeah,
What the water is here now, it's probably 7 or 8 degrees in the middle of winter. I'd swim, I do a dip in the morning in my togs, and I do longer swims in a wetsuit because I'm a wimp. But 8 degrees, I don't know how we could manage 1.6 for a kilometer.
yeah.
Fair play to you anyway. But yeah, so lots of wildlife in the Antarctic. And
Lots.
of course, the thing about it is, again, if we went back 150 years, it was the epicenter of whaling in the world. So they reckon that there were 300,000 blue whales killed in the Antarctic in about 80 or 90 years by whalers. And there's an Irish connection, of course, we always find one, which is that back in about the 1800s, there was a Norwegian whaling station set up on the Inishkea Islands on the Mullet Peninsula and in Donegal, Lely Bay. And they weren't doing very well, and it was a Norwegian guy, and I think he was on the verge of bankruptcy. And he kind of thought, God, I need to improve the technology. So he invented an explosive harpoon. So as opposed to the guys having to throw
Yeah.
it over, this was a dynamite-powered harpoon, and that was the big change in whaling. And they took that technology down to the Antarctic and slaughtered
Went to
300,000,
town on it.
as well as lots of other species, fin whales and minke whales and God knows what else. And so you can only imagine what it was like back in the day. But thankfully they've been protected for 30 or 40 years now. There's still, we hear about illegal whaling that was going on
Mm.
there until risky enough. But yeah, so it would have been absolutely incredible. Even in Tom Green's time, you can only imagine the amount of wildlife that was there. But of course, we have the other depressing story from there now, which is the ice melt that you were telling me about a little earlier.
Yeah, so like when I was there, we were actually really lucky. We had our own guide because there was 18 with our group, the swimming group, and 14 of those were swimmers. So we got our own guide on the boat, and it was Monica. She's part of Antroply, the ship that we were on. She's been involved with them for 26 years. So she's the historical person on the boat. So she was amazing. She gave us a lecture on whaling actually, and the really shocking thing from that I took away, because I didn't really, I suppose you don't really understand where is the oil going, and it went in everything. It was going in street lights, and some of it is still used today. But Vicks Vapor Rub had whale oil in it, which I didn't know, and I think it was only in the 60s that would have been stopped when the laws changed. So, when she said that in our whaling lecture, it was like a big gasp of, oh God, everybody's had Vicks Vapor Rub rubbed on them. Um, but it's something like that is the norm, and then it's only when it's pointed out that no, this is why it's so wrong, that people are like, of course it's so wrong, and they change their ways. But
Yeah, I
she
guess.
was able to, she gave a good kind of view of, we were in Paradise Harbour, so we heard some of the ice was calving and breaking in. So like it's massive when it happens, and sometimes there's the really loud cracks, but you don't actually see anything fall off. So it's like an internal break, but it's not actually falling off into the sea.
These
So
are,
that happened. Hmm?
these are the large icebergs now you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the flows. Yeah.
So that happened. I was on the Zodiac with her, but I just asked her, like, what was it like when you started? So she pointed out huge areas of sea that would have been fully covered with ice when she started out, and it's every season it's receding. So it's something that's really noticeable. And I suppose people can think that's far away places problems, but what I would pull that back to for anyone in Galway is the diving board. You have you have your marker of the sea level there. So it's really obvious if there's, if the ice melts in one place, it's going to turn into water and end up somewhere else. So, we have got higher tides in the last, I suppose, like I'm thinking of my lifetime and from when I was swimming as a child in Black Rock, what a high tide looked like then. But now when I see a high tide, I'm less nervous of jumping off the top because it's the water's a bit closer to meet me.
Some benefits to global warming.
Yeah, but not I suppose not for the people who park their cars in the car park on Salt Hill and it gets washed away.
Well, and we're here in Lahinch, of course, we have the same issues and it's storm.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing about the ice melt is that, you know, people may not understand, or some people, that it's not, that you stop global warming and then the ice stops. It's not. These things have momentum, and even if we stopped now, you probably wouldn't stop the momentum of
no,
melting, and that's just quite terrifying. If you think of the last ice age, about 9, 10, 12,000 years ago, that they now think the sea levels were somewhere between 150 to 200 meters lower while all the ice was there. So, for example, what does that mean? The Aran Island would have been a part of the mainland of Ireland. If you drop the sea 150, 200 meters, Ireland would look dramatically different. So, if you think about it coming in the other direction. But anyway, look, we don't want to panic people.
yeah.
Let's talk about the good things in the wildlife. So, yeah. So, tell me about some other wildlife you've seen in the Antarctic.
Okay, so we were going down the Lemaire Channel, which it's a real focus point for the whales, and they move fast through there because there's a lot going on, so they don't want to be hanging around to be eaten by anything else or be in interactions with anything else. So the whales, so we saw loads of humpbacks there. Now the humpbacks weren't that close to the boat, but like they were by far and away the most common that we saw, loads of them, and that was a really interesting thing. That like if anyone got a picture of the tail fluke, they gave us a website and said upload it there because it's all part of a group tracking thing. And I know you probably have an interesting story about that.
The photographic ID, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's fantastic. Actually, there's a site called, I think it's called happywhale.com. And if you get
that's it. Yeah,
if you get a shot of the tail fluke, you put it in. There's a guy, I forget his name, in California, set it up. So it's brilliant. Yeah, it's, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a bit like our fingerprint. For every animal, it's unique. And when humpbacks dive, they show the tail fluke as they're going down. So, you can see this thing that's unique to each individual animal. So we did a lot of work with the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group. Have been doing this for 20 years, and then we submit our sightings to them. So yeah, we did have something interesting in our last series in 2016, 2017, whereby the humpback whales had gotten into a pattern in Ireland whereby they come to the Blasket Islands off West Kerry in the summertime to feed on sandeel and sprat. And then a lot of those same individuals would go to West Cork and show up there in the summer from Baltimore and places like that and down south. And that had been a pattern for about 15 years or so. The same animals were there because they're given numbers. So, there's Humpback Ireland 24, 25. There's one called Boomerang, one of the early ones, because he kept coming back. And in that summer of 2016, 2017, what we found is we found humpback whales showed up west of the Clare coast, which they'd never been seen, certainly not in the wintertime, they'd never been seen there feeding. And while I was in the water with one, I got a shot of the tail fluke, and then we got tail flukes above water. And 3 or 4 of those animals had always, for 15 years, gone to the Baskets in summer and gone to West Cork in the winter. That winter, none went to West Cork. There was no humpback sighted during the key feeding season, and they came to Clare. Now, why is that? It would more than likely be, if I was a scientist, I'd be more cautious, but I think, yeah, it's the sprat. We've been saying about the sprat fisheries for 10 years. You've got to stop fishing so much sprat. 3 or 4 times against whatever advice is there, and the advice that's there is based on no data at all. It's just a guesswork. And then late that year, we discovered that we're going to be new sprat fishery west of Clare. So it's very depressing, and since then we haven't even had humpbacks west of Clare. So we really aren't taking care of these animals. But photographic ID is a fantastic tool for whales. And different species you can use different parts. So with blue whales, we used the back of them because they don't tail fluke very often. They do, but you don't always see the fluke, and it's not distinctive. But their backs have these little patterns along it, like a mottled thing. And there are people who will sit day after day, scientists, looking at these literally with their eyes and matching them up, and you can match. So we matched a blue whale that we had in the Azores, which had been previously seen in Iceland in the summertime, and then back in the Azores as well. It was the first three-way match in the northeast
Yeah.
Atlantic. And that proved that these animals go up the mid-Atlantic ridge in the springtime, they feed in Iceland in the summer, and then they come back down closer to Ireland in the autumn time, probably to the tropics to breed. And we made a link also from Ireland to the Azores. Again, other people taking photographic ID, and we just worked with everybody around the Atlantic and just were nice and cooperative and worked with people and managed to help to make these matches. So, yeah, photographic ID, it's a brilliant tool. So, yeah, where does that leave us now, Dee?
Well, I suppose since we're talking about photographs and footage, we'll talk about what's in the news recently. So, there's plenty of basking sharks being spotted off the west coast. I'm sure you've been in on that.
Yeah, look, it's great. I mean, west of Ireland, we're really privileged. There's about 4 or 5 places in the world where basking sharks come so quite this close to shore. So we have, Cornwall, Isle of Man is a real hotspot, the west of Scotland and the west of Ireland. And very traditional. The Levon Grania was their name in Irish, the sunfish, or Levon Moor, the sun shark or the great shark. Um, Probably, we first came to Irish people's attention in Robert Flaherty's documentary Man of Iron, which is actually, I think, the first or second ever documentary in the world, made in the 1920s. But he filmed the Iron people hunting basking sharks in open boats. And they were used, their liver is about a third of the size of their body. It was used for street lights. It was used in all kinds of industrial purposes that you mentioned, the whales. They reckon that whale oil oiled the machinery of the Industrial Revolution and 2 world wars, and basking shark oil. Um, so they were actually hunted in Ireland hugely. There was a station in Achill Island, and they killed 9,000 basking sharks between 1950 and 1964. We stopped hunting them probably maybe 20 years ago in Ireland, but they were hunted in Irish waters by Norwegian fishermen until 2006, which is quite staggering.
Yeah.
Uh, they're officially an endangered species now, and that only happened last year. They're technically, I was putting posts today, people might have seen this, the 1976 Wildlife Act, which in Ireland was the first time to legally acknowledge the rights of wildlife and protect them. They decided not to include fish and invertebrates, and it was amended in 2002, but that didn't change. So they really don't have, or have very, very little protection in Irish waters. European Union rules came in some years ago that stopped them being target fish. So in other words, you can't go out and try to fish them. But if you catch them in their net and you say, "Oh, I was looking for pollock," you could do that every day of the week, and you're not
Yeah.
breaking up, which is quite staggering. I find the second largest fish in the ocean.
Yeah, and it's funny actually. So I think we were a nation brought up on Jaws and the fear of Jaws and sharks because once those videos surfaced of basking sharks, I put up your post on my story, and I had lots of people saying, "What? This was my one fear. I didn't know I could have it in Ireland." But like, tell us about the basking shark and why it's not something we need to worry about.
Well, look, the basking shark they're filter feeders. They don't have teeth. They feed on plankton. But I mean, I'll probably start in that I can find no record of anywhere in Ireland or the UK waters of a shark attacking the person. No. There's a couple of stories floating around with some angler charter boats saying, "Oh yeah, I was taking a hook out of a blue shark's mouth and it nearly took my foot off." Well, what would you expect? He's
Yeah.
taking environment and is fighting for its life. I can find no record of that. Sharks have, there's 400 different species of sharks globally. There are 3 or 4 that are aggressive, by which means these are territorial animals. People walk past my house, my dogs bark, and that's grand. So if we get into the water with the 3 or 4 out of 400 species and they want to come and buzz us and maybe take a bite, they're not interested in us. We're not fat enough. We don't have enough meat. They usually think we're a seal or we're something else, and then they go away. 7 or 8 people killed globally by sharks every year. Many sharks killed by people?
A lot more.
Between 70 and 100 million.
Yeah.
100 million. So Yeah, and these are apex predators, so it's a real problem for an ecosystem. If you take them out of the ecosystem, that has consequences all the way down the line. So to come back to basking sharks, I mean they're docile, they're harmless. There's a lovely saying in Irish, say, "Cosov levon grania," as tranquil as a basking shark, and they are. But these are 8 meter, 5 ton animals, and they're very skittish. So if you touch them in the water, they'll flinch. Now you have to think about getting the belt of a 5 ton tail. That's a small truck. And you have to think to yourself, would you walk into a field and approach a bullock or a heifer, or not to mention a bull, and start rubbing them? They are dangerous to be around, and, you know, we are disturbing them if we swim with them. Now, I've done it a lot, but I do it for a purpose, which is to document them. And I don't decry people for doing it. But if you are, and you find yourself in the position where they are, we are disturbing them because they come here to feed, and they probably have a small window to do that. So, just let them swim past you. And I was lucky to, I met a man in Cornwall who had spent decades learning how to push them properly and how to not disturb them. And I was lucky to work with him for a while, about 10 or 15 years ago. Which is basically to watch them and to figure out that they take a line in the water, they're following seams of plankton, and to sit there motionless and let them go past you. Now that's much harder than just chasing after them to get your picture, but that's really what we should be doing, I guess. So, but as I say, look, I'm not giving out if people got in the water, and there aren't very many people that have done it or that are likely to do it. But to come back to this inherent fear, well, that we supposedly have of sharks. I mean, Jaws has an awful lot to answer for. Isn't it an incredible fact that Peter Benchley, who wrote the film, he wrote the story of Jaws, the book, and he was the screenwriter, that he came face to face with a great white some years after the movie, and he thought to himself, this is natural justice, it's going to kill me. It didn't, and Benchley became an advocate and a shark conservationist for the rest of his life. So he spent the rest of his life trying to reverse the damage that Jaws had done about sharks. Do you know what I mean? And I can't say that they're not dangerous animals because they're top predators, but your chances of being bitten by a shark in this part of the world, you have a better chance of winning the lotto 2 weeks in a row, I would say.
I've a question here hanging on the screen just about sharks on the East Coast. So she doesn't mention the size of the shark, but she thinks a shark corpse could have been seen at Sea Point, which is inside in Dublin Harbour. But what would the chances be of that?
Oh, absolutely. Look, as farmer once said, where you have livestock, you'll have dead stock. So the
Yeah.
animals, they pass away. And absolutely, there would be sharks in the Irish Sea. But look, I live here in Lahinch, in the Scanner Bay, and there was a incredible man here called Jack Shine. From the 1950s to the 1980s, he used to catch porbeagle sharks from the shore. Now, these are 2.5 meter sharks that look exactly like great whites, except
Yeah.
they're just smaller. So they were swimming here, and they're all gone, by the way, now. They were fished out. They were swimming here, when I was a kid. They were swimming here for hundreds of years, and nobody knew they were there because they're not interested in humans. So don't be worried that the sharks are there. People are far more dangerous.
Definitely. I agree with that. I suppose we just have a little bit of time. I'll ask about orcas. So the orcas were a big feature on the trip in Antarctica because we had one lady, Kath Pendleton, she was going doing an ice mile swim. So we'd set the route that she was going to do for her ice mile, and then a pod of 10 orcas appeared, and they were teaching the young how to feed. They were spotting. So that area, there was no swimmer was going in there, but the focus of everybody was watching the orcas because even in the Antarctica, it's still quite rare to see such activity and to have them in an area for so long. So I know orcas were spotted on the North Channel last year. So the North Channel is the area where people swim from the north of Ireland to Scotland. So I suppose are they something you've seen off the coast, or is it more of an east coast thing?
I've never seen one, but I hope to do some work with them over the next year or two. We have a plan. Um, so actually, funnily enough, a friend of mine, Al Meany, who's a big wave surfer, was paddling, was doing a stand-up paddleboard from Portrush to Scotland 5 or 6 years ago for charity to raise money, and I sent him a link. I said, look, these are the orca sightings, just don't stray too far from the rib. Yeah, there's no record again of anyone being attacked by an orca in the wild, but having said that, we haven't been swimming with them for very long. And there are different subspecies. There's certainly animals that focus on fish, and there are other subspecies of orcas that focus on mammals, such as seals.
Yes.
But there are also probably still early days what we know about them, ones that might just forage on whatever is available. And these are incredibly intelligent, sophisticated hunters. You know, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, who's to say they wouldn't just have a bit of a play with you in a tail flick? And these are monsters, do you know what I mean? But I do hope to do something, and I do hope to swim with them if it's safe in the coming years. The ones that we would have seen in Irish waters are quite likely to be, they're called the West Coast community, as in the Scottish West Coast. I think they should be called the Irish community because they forage all around Ireland. So they've been
Yeah.
seen off the Basket Islands, they've been seen off the pier in Dunleary, and quite regularly, the first week in June, there's one or two of them seem to pass through the Blasket Sound pretty much every year. Sightings are within a few days of each other. So yeah, they are around, but there's only, I think, about 6 or 7 animals left in that group, and they've been studied since the 1970s. They've never had a calf. They're kind of a ghost pod. And hopefully in our next series we'll reveal why they're not having babies or what might be the matter. Sorry to tease now, but we'll give away too.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Um, there's another question here. It's an interesting one, actually. So somebody's found a large whale tooth on the shore in Clew Bay. It looks old, but is there any way to get it identified?
I recognise that name. Is that Eastkey Britain? Eastkey
Ah.
Sur.
I can't see the full name.
So how are you, Eastkey? Absolutely. Take a picture and send it to the Irish Whale and Dolphin group, or take a few pictures maybe, or a video, or even send it to them and they'll give it back to you. Yeah, I'm sure there are people there who are experts in that area who would be able to identify them. It's fabulous. They're fabulous, mementos to have. Back in the whaling days, and I have to say I'm a begrudging admirer, there was a lot of very interesting culture around whaling. Whalers kind of, you know, particularly the New England, the Yankee whalers, they went to sea for 2 or 3 years and they forged an awful lot of the trading links around the world. They went down around the Horn and into the Pacific and all the way across the Pacific and forged these incredible trading links. And they went to see a lot of new cultures. So there was a lot of very interesting culture, like the shanty, the sea shanty songs. They used to have, poor old Reuben Ramsay, Ramsay, my boys. And this stuff came from their own, that they keep singing to keep the rhythm. But one of the things, the reason I bring it up is that the whale teeth, and particularly sperm whale teeth, were a kind of would say money up for old rope. So sailors were terribly paid, really badly paid. So they'd give them the old rope and they'd make a few pence for it. But they'd give them the whale teeth and then they would carve things out of them. So when they got back to port, they would make it into jewellery and that. And some of them are fantastic. You still find them in museums, and particularly in New England, in America, places like that. So yeah, fantastic memento to have. But I'm sure there's somebody available, Easky, that could identify that for you.
Brilliant. I'm seeing, okay, I figured out how to scroll through the questions now, which is great.
That was my daughters, Emer and Jill, who said hello to me there. I didn't want to interrupt you. And hopefully Ashling's watching as well. How are you?
I also have to say hello to Adam Larner, my nephew, who asked for a shout out ages back, but I didn't want to say it. I have to stay professional. Roisin Coilers, it's just a lovely comment. I'm going to read it out. So she's in La Gomera listening. She had to stop and take a call, but went outside and saw a big pot of whales in the bay. So perfect timing.
Send us a picture. Send us a picture. Not a bad place to be quarantined, La Gomera.
Definitely not. Okay, so somebody has asked, would it be too late to catch a sighting of some basking sharks out west in August post-lockdown?
So the beautiful thing I think about basking sharks is they're not here, and then in April and May, bang, we get 3-4 days, 1 day, 5 days, 2 weeks, and then bang, they're gone.
Yeah.
There is another seasonal peak in August as well, yeah. It's very hard to say where to go, but Blasket Islands, again, is a hot spot for them, more in April and May, but in August you're likely to see them in the Blasket Islands as well, and anywhere off Mayo. I mean, it's very, you can't really prescribed to go here at this time. But you have a good chance. Inishbofin, Clare Island, those places, they do get a lot of sightings if you look out, talk to the ferryman. But in August, yeah, there's sightings as well, which is good time.
Okay. Oh, she said they're gone now, Roisin, about the whales, so she won't get a picture for you.
We feel sorry for you, Roisin. Jeez.
We've a few minutes, so I'll go back to the humpbacks and the bubble net feeding. So you captured this.
I did. So for anyone that doesn't know, what they do is, fish can swim as fast as a whale. So how do you catch a lot of fish when you're a whale? Because you need to eat a lot of fish to nourish yourself. So they've evolved this ingenious kind of a term where they are technique where sometimes whales will cooperate that if there's a shoal of fish, the whales dive underneath them and they blow bubbles while they're swimming around in a circle like this, do like this. And so the bubbles rise up to the surface, they come up with gravity, and it's like a net, it forms a curtain around the sprat or whatever the target species that they have. And some of the fish will swim through the bubble net, but a lot of them won't, and then the whales come like this up, and obviously the fish swim to the surface, and then they break the surface a little bit, but they come back down and they get into this big gob of a whale. So I don't know why I just had this crazy idea where I thought, God, I'd love to film that, and never had been filmed in the world. Some guys in Alaska who are the world experts on this kind of thing, they put what the National Geographic critter cam. They stuck a camera onto the back of one of these whales, and then they were able to see what the whale saw, but nobody had gone in there and pointed the camera at the right place and done observations. So I tried for years and years, and we spent probably 2 years watching drone footage and observing how they were doing it and to try and do it safely. So yeah, I got my chance west of the Kerry coast back in 2016, I think it is now 2017, and yeah, I managed to get myself in a position to film it. So it was incredible. I don't know if I do it again, because one of the scariest things is when I got to the bubble net, I realised there was no other animals there. The common dolphins, of which there were hundreds in the area, and the seabirds and everything else, and seals, they didn't go near the bubble net because they knew it was too dangerous. So I think I had about 3 encounters with the animal, and I managed to film it safely and to not disturb the animal, and I got away, and it was very useful for scientific research. The guys in Alaska were enthralled to look through it and use it as part of their research for scientific papers, because there's still a lot we didn't understand about it. But yeah, I mean, they're just magnificent creatures to witness up close and to be near them. It's an incredible privilege. Yeah. So if anybody doesn't know the way they feed, obviously there's a genetic, or they've evolved in a certain way. Obviously these animals are 35 tons. So baleen whales, which are whales that don't have teeth, like fin whales, minke whales, blue whales, humpback whales, they have to be very sleek to go through the water, because they migrate very long distances between feeding and breeding grounds. So they feed in the northern latitudes, which would be Ireland, Scotland, Norway, the Arctic, usually in the winter months, and then they go to tropical areas to have their calves in spring and early summer, probably to get away from predators like orcas. So, if you've got to swim 3, 4, 5, 7,000 kilometers, you have to be very sleek like that, a bit like yourself, Dee, and not like me. But if you want to be able to eat an awful lot of fish, well, if your mouth is only that big, you're not going to eat them. So what they do is they have these throat pleats that basically they can just balloon open. So they pump their tails and they get into the middle of all the fish, and then they just balloon open this big mouth, stretches, and takes in, the humpbacks I think take 40 tons of water and fish, and then the baleen, which is like a sieve basically, it's like a brush, they just push the water out through it like that, and manage to keep the fish. So yeah, it's quite an incredible evolutionary adaptation when you think of it.
A unique way to get your dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if we had to fight for dinner, we'd be less picky.
So somebody has asked why fungi has stayed first sighted in the early 80s.
God, I don't know. You'll have to ask fungi. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, bottlenose dolphins are curious. They're very social animals, and again, I'm not a scientist, but from what I know of them, they're very sociable. They live in family groups, and for some reason, there's lots of examples around the world of solitary bottlenose dolphins who seem to have become separated from their group, from their pod. And we have Dusty bottlenose dolphin here in the Clare coast for 20 years now, and they seem to stay around, and perhaps because they're sociable, they seek out, well, humans seek them out, and they seem to like human company. But they're dangerous animals. Now, there aren't too many incidents with fungi, thankfully, but he tends to stay in slightly deeper water than the one on the Clare coast, known as Dusty, who comes into shallower water. But bottlenose dolphins, before we hate sharks and we love dolphins. Well, bottlenose
Yeah.
dolphins, they engage in gang rape. Several males will basically harass a female and rape her multiple times. They engage in infanticide, which is where they'll kill a calf because they know the female will come into estrus again and they can mate with her. So, just because they have this kind of smiley shape to their face doesn't mean that they're lovely creatures. They are amazing creatures, as are sharks, but these are little negative and positive prejudices that we have developed over the
That's
years.
down to Flipper.
Down to Flipper has a lot to answer for, yeah. And
Yeah. They got it all wrong.
Great.
What was there? Yeah, so Maeve, who asked about fungi, actually, she had a lovely point, and it's something that I always say. So she has some great memories of seeing unusual sightings around Inishmore, and when we keep our eyes open, the world is amazing. So that's one thing I say to everybody is just if you only had to make one change, let it be that you actually open your eyes and see your environment, because I've noticed it with people swimming that we'll be walking down to the water and I'm saying, oh wow, look at the sky today. And I can tell that the other person isn't even seeing it because all they're focused on is we have to swim 3K today. And they're only going to see the water in front of them for that 3K. They're not going to take anything else in. So, I suppose that's one thing to do.
Yeah, tune in. I mean, I love swimming, but I don't have a watch or anything. I just like to swim because I love swimming and to see, and I'll stop anytime I want to see, to look around or to admire a beautiful sunset or something. For me, that's the beauty of getting in. I mean, I like to swim distances too, and can swim in 2 kilometers at certain times. But it's a matter of taking in what's there. That's why I like to get in the ocean, not to kind of. It's like, I know some people like to jog with headphones, but for me, here in the country, that misses half the point of, you go out to hear the sounds of the nature and to engage. I know, again, I'm not giving out about people who do it, but it seems that's part of the experience for me, is to connect with nature and to,
Well, I think a lot of people are reconnecting right now when things have slowed down a bit. People do seem to be becoming more aware and growing a bit of edge and taking it all in, noticing the birds. So it's all good.
Yeah, maybe that's one of a number of positives from the lockdown, that people are connecting with that and feeling a little bit less pressure in the world. And it'd be nice if we took some of that forward with us when hopefully things ease off a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Right, so I don't we've no more questions in there, so I think we'll leave it on a happy note.
Great.
So is there anything else you wanted to add in?
Don't think so. No,
Yeah.
that's great. I hope people have enjoyed it, and yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks a million, yeah, for doing it, because it's this is totally new to me. It was just like I said, it came out of a conversation where someone was asking me about Antarctica, and I kind of more came to the realization that I think Ireland's a bit more exciting if we look.
Yeah, absolutely.
And know the right people.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And you know what? I've made so many friends from swimming. It's great. And I'm trying to get more of that going, to hook up with people in different counties and invite people. We swim here in West Clare. Anybody ever wants to come swimming with us when the lockdown is gone, please just give me a text or something. We're delighted to have you. It was a lovely, safe day. It's a great way to reconnect, as well as being a fantastic exercise. But look, I know everybody here are converted swimmers, so I'm not speaking to the converted. Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, so I'll close down the video and it'll be up for 24 hours on, I think maybe both our stories, I'm not too sure. And I'm going to try and save it as well, and I'll send it to you, Ken, and people can contact either of us for that video if they miss it in the 24 hours.
Great, lovely.
Okay, thanks a million.
Okay.
Thanks, bye.
Bye. Cheers.